My girlfriend tried to hide her career from me. I never thought I'd be the guy to write something like this, but life has a way of throwing curveballs you don't see coming. I've always been a pretty straightforward dude. I work in IT, I live in a decent apartment with my best friend Ryan, and I'm not the kind of guy who usually gets caught up in drama. For the most part, my life was predictable in the best possible way. Then Emily walked into it and everything changed. From the outside looking in, people probably thought Emily and I had the kind of relationship that belonged in a rom-com. She was beautiful, witty, and had this warm laugh that made you forget about whatever else was happening around you. I met her at a friend's birthday party about a year ago, and it was one of those cliche moments where time slowed down when she walked into the room. She wasn't even trying to stand out. Jeans, a simple top, hair tied up, but she had this effortless glow about her. We clicked immediately. I'm not usually the smoothest guy when it comes to flirting, but with Emily it was easy. Conversation flowed, jokes landed, and before the night ended, we were exchanging numbers. A week later, we were on our first date at the small Italian place downtown, and I swear I knew then that she was going to be important in my life. The first few months were nothing short of magical. We did all the classic couple stuff: road trips, lazy Sundays on the couch, late night ice cream runs, surprise date nights. She'd leave little notes in my backpack if I had a rough week at work, and I'd cook her breakfast on Saturdays even though my idea of cooking was usually eggs and toast. We weren't just dating, we were building something that felt solid. Emily was supportive, thoughtful, and fun. She loved hiking as much as I did, so we'd drive out to trails on weekends, sometimes getting lost, but not caring because being with her made everything feel like an adventure. She pushed me to try new things, like yoga, which I sucked at, and I introduced her to my nerdy side: board games, retro video games, and my embarrassing vinyl collection. She didn't judge, she actually leaned into it, and that made me fall even harder. But if I'm being honest, there was always this one weird gap in our relationship. Emily never talked about work. At first, I didn't notice because everything else was so good. She told me she worked in marketing, but that was about as specific as she got. Whenever I asked what her day was like, she'd brush it off with a vague, "Oh, just the usual," and quickly change the subject. I figured she was just tired of talking about her job after work. I get it. Sometimes the last thing I want to do is talk about software bugs and cranky clients. But over time, the avoidance started to feel deliberate. Like, one time we were out with my roommate Ryan and his girlfriend at the time, and Ryan asked Emily which company she worked for. She smiled, sipped her drink, and said, "It's just a small firm downtown, nothing exciting." Then she immediately redirected the conversation to Ryan's job. I noticed it, Ryan noticed it, but none of us pushed further. At first, it was kind of a running joke between Ryan and me. He'd nudge me after she left and whisper, "Dude, your girlfriend works for the CIA. That's the only explanation." I'd laugh it off, telling him she was probably just embarrassed that her job wasn't glamorous. But as months went on, more little things started stacking up. Emily's schedule was strange. Some days, she'd come home at the usual 6 or 7, ready for dinner and a movie. Other days, she wouldn't show up until almost midnight, exhausted, saying she had last-minute meetings. She never brought home a laptop, never checked emails in front of me, never mentioned coworkers by name. And then there were the clothes. Emily wasn't flashy, but every once in a while she'd show up in an outfit that looked expensive. I'd ask about it, and she'd casually say, "Oh, I got it on sale," or "My friend gave it to me." Again, I didn't want to seem controlling or nosy, so I let it slide. But it kept nagging me in the back of my mind. The first time I brought it up to Sarah, my best friend since high school, she didn't hold back. "Come on, Nate," she said, rolling her eyes. "How do you not see that shady? A girl who dodges questions about her job, comes home at midnight, and has expensive clothes she claims were on sale? Please." "Sarah, not everything's a conspiracy," I argued. "She's probably just private about work. Or she's hiding something." Sarah gave me that look she always did when she thought I was being naive. She'd been protective of me ever since I got cheated on back in college, and she didn't trust easily. Ryan, on the other hand, was more laid back. When I mentioned it to him, he shrugged. Some people just don't like mixing work and personal life. My uncle's like that. He won't even tell us what he does, and it's just accounting. I wanted to believe Ryan. I wanted to believe that Emily's secrecy was just a personality quirk. Nothing serious, because everything else about her was perfect. She was thoughtful, loving, and made me feel like the luckiest guy alive. Why would she risk that by hiding something major? But then there were the nights she came home looking completely drained, like she'd been through the ringer. One time she collapsed on the couch still in full makeup, and when I asked if she was okay, she forced a smile and said, "Just a long day?" When I pressed for details, she kissed me and said, "I don't want to think about work when I'm with you." It was sweet, but it also felt like a shield. Another night, she got a call while we were watching a movie. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, and then walked into the bedroom to answer. I couldn't hear much, but her voice was low and serious. When she came back out, I asked who it was. She gave me a quick smile and said, "Just a work thing." I remember staring at her, wondering if she even realized how often she gave the same vague answers. Still, I told myself not to overthink it. Relationships are built on trust, right? And Emily had given me no real reason to believe she was lying. People have boundaries, and maybe this was hers. But then, came the little slip-ups. One evening, she mentioned going to dinner with coworkers at a restaurant downtown. Later that week, when I casually asked how it was, she blinked for a second too long before saying, "Oh yeah, it was fine." But she'd already told me earlier that week she'd been working late that night. When I pointed it out, she laughed nervously and said, "Oh right, that was another night. I'm mixing things up." Maybe she was, or maybe she wasn't. The thing is, when you love someone, you don't want to catch them in lies. You want to believe the best. And God, I wanted to believe the best about Emily. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a part of her life I wasn't being let into. The first time Sarah met Emily, she pulled me aside afterward and said, "She's gorgeous, I'll give her that, but she's slippery. Watch out." Slippery? She's not a snake, Sarah. Just don't be blind, Nate. Not every smile means honesty. I brushed it off because that's what you do when your best friend is overly protective. But in the quiet moments, when Emily was asleep beside me, or when she canceled dinner plans last minute with a vague work thing, Sarah's words would come back to me. The thing is, Emily made me feel so damn happy most of the time that I didn't want to ruin it by playing detective. We had too many good memories. Late night drives with music blasting, weekends away in little cabins, lazy mornings making pancakes. She told me she loved me in the kind of way that felt real. She looked at me like I was her person. So I told myself that whatever she wasn't telling me about work, it couldn't be that bad. People have secrets, right? And maybe hers wasn't a deal breaker. At least that's what I thought back then. Because little did I know, those small inconsistencies, the vague answers, the midnight calls, the expensive clothes, were just the tip of an iceberg I wasn't ready to crash into. And trust me when I say, once the cracks start showing in a perfect picture, you can't unsee them. If my relationship with Emily was all sunshine and butterflies, this next phase was where the storm clouds started rolling in. And at first, I told myself it was just a little rain. Nothing major. Relationships have ups and downs, right? That's what everyone says. But looking back now, I can see how the small cracks started spreading until I couldn't ignore them anymore. The first big crack came with the phone calls. It started subtly. A random buzz of her phone at dinner, and she'd glance at the screen with this expression I couldn't quite place. Not fear, not exactly guilt, but something that didn't fit the casual work call excuse she'd give. Then she'd excuse herself, step out of the room, and lower her voice. I'd be left sitting there with my half-eaten pasta, wondering why the woman who supposedly trusted me enough to share her life didn't want me to overhear what was just a work call. At first, I rationalized it. Maybe it was confidential. Maybe her company had strict policies. I work in IT. I know how NDAs and client privacy can be a pain. But then it wasn't just once or twice. It was become a regular thing. Dinner interrupted. Movie nights interrupted. Hell, even when we were in bed, her phone would vibrate and she'd slide out quietly like she thought I was asleep. One night, curiosity got the better of me. As she was slipping out into the hallway, I pretended to stay asleep but listened closely. Her voice was hushed, rushed, but firm. I couldn't make out the words, just the tone. It didn't sound like someone discussing ad campaigns or marketing strategies. It sounded heavier. When she came back to bed, she kissed my cheek and whispered, "Go back to sleep, babe." I wanted to ask who it was, what was going on, but I chickened out. I didn't want to seem like the paranoid boyfriend. But the seed of doubt had been planted. The second big crack was the clothes. Emily had always dressed well, but in a kind of simple girl next door way. Cute sundresses, comfortable jeans, cardigans that somehow looked chic on her, but would have made me look like a grandpa. Then slowly, her wardrobe started leveling up. Sleek designer blouses, dresses that looked like they belonged on red carpets, shoes that definitely didn't come from the clearance rack. I'm not an expert in fashion, but I know what Gucci looks like. I know what Louis Vuitton looks like. I also know my girlfriend didn't have that kind of money. Or at least, I didn't think she did. When I'd ask about a new dress, she'd shrug and say, "Oh, Chloe lent it to me," or "I got it on super sale." Maybe I was gullible, but I wanted to believe her. Until one night, we went to dinner with Ryan and she wore this black cocktail dress that had him literally choking on his drink. "Holy shit, Nate, that's a Versace dress," he whispered as she went to the bathroom. "Are you sure?" I asked, though my stomach was already sinking. "Positive. My ex was obsessed with that brand. That's a couple grand at least." When Emily came back, Ryan complimented her. "That's a killer dress. Where'd you get it?" She smiled sweetly. "Borrowed it from a friend." Ryan looked at me, then back at her. "Some generous friend." She laughed it off, but I noticed how her eyes flicked nervously between us. Later that night, when I brought it up, she brushed me off with a quick kiss and said, "Don't worry, babe. I told you I have friends who share clothes with me. It's not a big deal." Maybe not to her, but to me, it felt like another piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. The third crack was the work trip. It was a Thursday evening when Emily casually mentioned she'd be out of town for a few days. "Just a quick work trip," she said, tossing it out like it was no big deal. I asked where she was going and she hesitated. "Chicago," she finally said. "It's just boring stuff. Nothing exciting." I wanted to believe her, but something about the hesitation, the way she avoided my eyes, it didn't sit right. So I did what I promised myself I wouldn't do. I started paying closer attention. That weekend, when she was supposedly in Chicago, I noticed her Instagram stories were suspiciously quiet. Emily loved posting random snapshots. Coffee cups, sunsets, her cat. so radio silence was unusual. Then on Saturday, I got a text from Sarah. Thought Emily was out of town? Yeah, she's in Chicago for work. Why? Sarah replied with a photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Emily at a downtown bar. Very much in our city, not Chicago. She was with a group of people I didn't recognize, dressed in another one of those glamorous outfits. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. When I confronted her later, she didn't even flinch. Oh, that? Yeah. The Chicago trip got canceled last minute, so I just went out with some coworkers instead. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. She gave me that smile, the one that usually melted my frustration. Because I knew you'd worry. You always do. I didn't want you to think I was lying or sneaky. I just didn't mention it, but she was lying and sneaky. Even if the cancellation story was true, why hide it? Why let me believe she was out of town when she was literally at a bar 10 minutes away? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, the cracks widening in my mind. When I told Sarah about it, she didn't mince words. She's hiding something, Nate. Full stop. People don't dodge basic questions about their lives unless they've got something to lose. Ryan, usually the guy who joked everything off, was surprisingly serious. Dude, I hate to say it, but Sarah's got a point. I mean, I like Emily, but the whole disappearing act and secretive job thing, it's sketchy. It hurt hearing it from Ryan. He'd always been in Emily's corner, teasing me about how lucky I was. If even he was admitting something felt off, maybe it wasn't just paranoia. Then there was Marcus. I met him one night when I went to surprise Emily after work. I texted her, saying I was outside her building, and she came down with a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, confident in the kind of way that immediately put me on edge. This is Marcus, Emily said, almost too quickly. We worked together. Marcus shook my hand firmly, flashing a smile that felt more like a smirk. So you're Nathan. I've heard a lot about you. I tried to play it cool, but something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Heard what, exactly? When Emily excused herself to take a call, Marcus leaned against the wall and said, She's a great girl. You're lucky. I know, I replied, keeping my tone even. He gave me a look I couldn't read, something between amusement and pity, before Emily returned. That night, I couldn't stop replaying the interaction in my head. Why did Marcus seem so comfortable around her? Why did she seem nervous introducing us? I told myself I was overthinking, but deep down, I knew. The perfect picture I'd been holding onto was fading. And the more I tried to ignore it, the more obvious it became. Emily was hiding something big. I just didn't know if I was ready to find out what. I don't know if you've ever felt that slow creeping itch in the back of your mind that refuses to go away no matter how much you try to distract yourself. That was me in those weeks after Emily's so-called work trip. I wanted so badly to believe her excuses, to trust the girl who had been my partner for over 2 years, but the more I replayed things in my head, the more the pieces didn't line up. The outfits, the late night calls, the new friends I never met, and now Marcus's confident, charming guy who seemed to orbit around her life like a satellite I couldn't quite catch up to. It was all too much. My chest felt tight whenever I thought about it, and no amount of Sarah's blunt advice or Ryan's chill out dude attitude could calm me down. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what. And once you're in that mindset when trust is shaken, every tiny detail becomes suspicious. It started with her laptop. Emily had always been protective of her devices, but recently it turned into something else. If I walked past her while she was on her laptop, she'd slam it shut like a teenager hiding a bad report card. Once, I got up in the middle of the night to grab some water and I noticed the glow of her screen in the living room. She was typing furiously, earbuds in. When she realized I was there, she startled like I had caught her committing a crime. Oh hey, she said too casually. Couldn't sleep. Just catching up on some reports. At 2 a.m, but I didn't press then. I kissed her forehead, said don't stay up too late, and went back to bed, though I didn't sleep at all. The breaking point came a week later. Emily left her bag on the couch while she showered. Normally I don't snoop, I really don't, but something inside me snapped. I wasn't trying to dig through her private stuff, but my eyes landed on a glossy envelope poking out of her bag. It wasn't sealed. I pulled it out and froze. Inside were photos. Professional, high glamour photos of Emily. She looked stunning hairstyled, makeup immaculate, outfits that looked like they belonged on a red carpet. And these weren't selfies or casual shots. These were portfolio pieces. Some of them were tasteful lingerie shots. High fashion, not cheap or raunchy, but still intimate in a way I had never seen before. On the back of one, in neat handwriting, was the name, Carter Agency. My hand shook. I shoved the photos back into the envelope, stuffed it into her bag, and sat down on the couch, staring into nothing. When Emily came out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, she froze at the sight of me sitting there. You okay, Nate? She asked, her voice cautious. I didn't know how to say it. My throat was dry. Emily, what's Carter Agency? Her face drained of color. She clutched the towel tighter, like it could shield her from the truth hanging between us. She stammered. Why are you asking that? Because I saw the photos, I said quietly. The portfolio. Emily, what's going on? What are you hiding from me? She sat down across from me, eyes wet, lips trembling. For a long time, she said nothing. And then, in a whisper, she said the words that cracked my world open. I'm a model, Nate. A professional model, and I've been hiding it from you. At first I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because after weeks of paranoia, late night calls, mysterious outfits, Marcus, this was the answer. You're a model? I repeated, my voice flat. Yes, she whispered. High-end, runway, catalog, sometimes lingerie. Carter Agency is the firm that represents me. Marcus is one of the senior managers there. That's why he's always around. I blinked. My stomach churned. So all this time, every excuse, every late night, you were modeling? Why the hell would you hide that from me? And that's when she broke. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mascara running even though she hadn't worn any in hours. She clutched my hands with desperate fingers. Because I was scared, Nate. Scared of losing you. Scared you see me differently. My parents never supported this. They called it shallow, disgraceful, told me I'd never be respected if I chose this life. I thought you'd believe the same. I thought you'd see me as cheap. Or worse. Her sobs filled the room and I just sat there stunned. My girlfriend, the woman I thought I knew, had been living a double life. I should have comforted her. I should have said the right thing. But betrayal coursed through me like fire. You lied to me, I said, pulling my hands away. For 2 years, Emily. You've been sneaking around, making me feel like I was losing my mind, all because you couldn't tell me the truth. It wasn't like that, she sobbed. I wanted to protect us. I wanted a normal relationship, free from the judgment, the looks. You don't know how people treat me when they find out. Men assume I'm easy. Women assume I'm vain. I didn't want to drag you into that world. Her words were raw, but my chest was a knot of anger, confusion, and heartbreak. Do you know what it felt like? I said, my voice sharp. Every late call, every time you came home in outfits you borrowed, every slip in your stories, I thought you were cheating. Do you know how humiliating it was to doubt you every damn day? She covered her face with her hands. I know, and I hate myself for it, but modeling is my passion, Nate. It's who I am, and I couldn't risk losing you over it. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. My mind ran wild. Sarah had told me Emily was hiding something. Ryan had noticed the cracks, and I had defended her, insisted she was loyal, trustworthy, perfect. Now, here I was, staring at the truth, and it wasn't betrayal in the way I feared, but it was still betrayal, because love without honesty is just a performance. The next day, I told Sarah everything. Her reaction? A sharp laugh. So she's a model? Damn, Nate. That explains the designer clothes and the sneaky phone calls. It's not funny, I snapped. I know it's not funny, she said, her tone softening. But look, at least she's not cheating. At least it's not drugs or some underground scam. She's a model. That's respectable. Hell, plenty of guys would brag about that. It's not about the job, I muttered. It's about the lies. Ryan was quieter when I told him. He leaned back on the couch, rubbing his chin. I mean, it's a lot, but she clearly cares about you, man. She was just scared. Doesn't excuse it, but it's not the worst secret in the world. Their words didn't help. I was stuck in the middle of love and betrayal, torn between compassion for her fear and rage at her deception. That night, Emily sat me down again. Her eyes were swollen from crying. I'll quit, she said suddenly. If it means keeping you, I'll quit modeling. I'll walk away from it all. My heart twisted. I didn't want that. I didn't want her to give up her passion because of me, but I also couldn't live in a relationship built on secrecy. I don't want you to quit, I said quietly. I want you to be honest. I want to know you, all of you, not this half-truth version you've been giving me. She nodded, tears slipping down her face. Then I'll tell you everything. No more lies. No more hiding. Just us. That's where I left it with her that night. But the truth is, I didn't know if I could ever fully trust her again. Love can survive many things, but can it survive years of lies? I didn't have the answer yet. All I knew was that the perfect image I had of Emily had been shattered, and now I had to decide if the real Emily, with all her secrets and scars, was someone I could still love. After Emily's confession, things between us didn't just go back to normal. In fact, they barely functioned at all. Every word felt loaded. Every silence felt like punishment. I had all the answers I thought I wanted, but instead of clarity, all I got was chaos. You'd think knowing the truth would bring relief. That's what I kept telling myself in the sleepless hours of the night. At least she's not cheating. At least she's not running some shady double life. But every time I looked at her, I didn't see the Emily I used to know. I saw the Emily who lied to my face for 2 years. And no matter how many times she whispered, I'm sorry, the words slid right off me. Our arguments started small. I'd ask, what time will you be home? And she'd hesitate. That pause, that tiny little pause, would trigger me. My chest would tighten, my voice would sharpen, and suddenly I'd snap. Why do you need to think about it? Are you actually going to work, or is this another modeling gig you won't tell me about until I find a flyer in your bag? Her eyes would well up. Nate, I told you, I'm being honest now. I have a shoot. I was just nervous about saying it. Nervous. Always nervous. I couldn't tell anymore if her nerves came from fear of losing me or fear of me finding out something worse. Then came the night we fought over Marcus. She got a text from him while we were watching TV. She smiled at her phone, typed something quickly, and set it down. I felt the heat rise in my neck. What did Marcus want? I asked. Just confirming a schedule for next week's show, she said calmly. I laughed bitterly. Right. You know how that looks, right? You hiding your career, sneaking around with this guy always in the picture, and now I'm supposed to believe it's just work? Emily's voice cracked. You think I'm sleeping with him? Is that what you really think of me? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence screamed louder than words. She stormed into the bedroom, slamming the door. I sat on the couch, staring at the muted TV screen, feeling like the worst version of myself. I vented to Sarah the next day. We were at a coffee shop near her office, her laptop open but ignored as I spilled everything. She says it's just work, but how can I trust her now? Every time her phone buzzes, I feel like I'm being lied to again. Sarah leaned back, sipping her latte like she had been waiting for me to finally get here. Nate, I told you from the start something was off, and now you know why. She didn't trust you enough to tell you the truth. That's not a relationship. That's a performance. Her words cut, mostly because they echoed my own thoughts. She's not trustworthy, Sarah continued. You can't build a life with someone who lies about who they are for 2 years. If she could hide this, what else could she hide? I rubbed my temples. I don't know, Sarah. I love her. I don't want this to be the end. She gave me that look only best friends can give, equal parts pity and exasperation. You don't have to want it to end, but you also can't ignore what's staring you in the face. Ryan had the opposite reaction. When I told him about the Marcus fight, he shrugged. Dude, I get it, you're hurt, but you're also jumping to conclusions. She didn't cheat. She didn't steal. She didn't gamble away your money. She just hid her job. For dumb reasons, sure, but reasons that make sense if you consider her parents drilled shame into her. I frowned. So, you think I should just forgive her? Pretend none of this happened? No, Ryan said firmly. I think you should stop making every text and every pause into evidence for a crime she didn't commit. You either work through it or you don't. But right now, you're torturing both of you. His words stung, mostly because I knew he was right. I was poisoning the relationship with my paranoia. But how could I not? Then Chloe entered the picture. I hadn't spoken much to Emily's younger sister before she was a college kid, busy with her own life. But one afternoon, she texted me out of the blue. Can we talk? I think you need to hear something. We met at a diner near campus. Chloe was nothing like Emily, more casual, more blunt, less polished. She ordered pancakes and didn't wait for them to arrive before diving in. You're mad at her, aren't you? She said between bites. I sighed. I'm not just mad, I'm broken. She lied for years, Chloe. I don't know if I can forgive that. Chloe set down her fork, looking me dead in the eye. You think she lied because she didn't care about you? You've got it backward. She lied because she cared too much. My parents, they drilled it into us that modeling is shameful, that no man would ever take us seriously if we did it. Emily grew up believing love and her career couldn't coexist. When she met you, she chose love. That's why she hid it. I blinked. So you're saying she lied to protect me? To protect herself, Chloe corrected. But yeah, also you. She thought she was saving the relationship. It's dumb, it's messy, but it wasn't malice, it was fear. Her words hit differently than Sarah's or Ryan's. They didn't erase the betrayal, but they reframed it. Still, no matter how much sense Chloe's explanation made, the jealousy lingered. Whenever Emily got dressed up for a shoot, I felt sick. Whenever Marcus's name popped up, I saw red. Every intimate photo I'd stumbled across replayed in my head, not with pride, but with doubt. Was she sharing sides of herself with the world that I thought were only for me? We fought about everything. Dishes, laundry, who was picking up groceries. All of it circled back to the elephant in the room, the fact that trust between us was cracked, maybe beyond repair. One night, after our fourth argument that week, Emily collapsed on the bed, tears spilling onto her pillow. I don't know how much longer I can do this, Nate, she whispered. I love you. I want this to work. But if you can't see past my mistake, then maybe we're already over. Her words lodged in my chest like a knife. I wanted to shout that she was wrong, that I could forgive her, that love would be enough. But all that came out was silence. That's what the fallout was. Silence. Loud, suffocating silence. We weren't laughing like we used to. We weren't making spontaneous plans or sharing dumb inside jokes or curling up on the couch without worry. Everything felt tense, like we were waiting for the next explosion. And in the back of my mind, one question gnawed at me. If she could hide something this big for this long, how could I ever be sure I knew the real Emily at all? When people say relationships are hard work, they usually mean little things, figuring out who does the dishes, learning how the other person snores, or arguing about what to watch on Netflix. What Emily and I had wasn't hard work. It was like trying to patch a sinking ship while still sailing it. And for weeks, I felt like I was drowning. Every conversation turned into an argument. Every silence felt like a bomb about to go off. Emily looked at me with red-rimmed eyes more than she smiled. I woke up with tension in my chest more than peace. I think we both knew we couldn't keep going like that. So, in a moment of desperation, Emily suggested therapy. Nate, she said one night, her voice small. We can't keep tearing each other apart like this. I don't want to lose you, but I don't know how to fix it alone. What if we saw someone? A therapist? Just to try. Part of me bristled. I've always been the handle-it-yourself type. The kind of guy who sees therapy as something other people do when things are really bad. But then I realized things were really bad. And maybe I couldn't handle it myself. So, reluctantly, I agreed. That's how we ended up sitting across from Dr. Karen Patel a week later. Her office was warm, not clinical like I expected. Bookshelves lined the walls, a few abstract paintings hung behind her desk, and a diffuser filled the room with lavender. She was in her 40s, with kind eyes that made you want to spill your guts even if you swore you wouldn't. She smiled as we sat down. So, Nathan and Emily, tell me what brings you here today. I shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Emily twisted her hands in her lap. We glanced at each other, waiting for the other to go first. Finally, I sighed. We're here because I don't trust her, and she doesn't trust me to hear the truth. Emily's eyes shimmered with tears. I hid something important from him for years, and now he doesn't know if he can forgive me. Dr. Patel nodded thoughtfully. All right. Why don't you each tell me, in your own words, what's been happening? Emily went first. She explained her career, how she had started modeling in college, how her parents' disapproval had forced her to keep it a secret, how she thought a normal relationship with me would only survive if she hid that part of her. I wasn't trying to hurt him, she said, her voice cracking. I was trying to protect us, but the more I hid, the harder it became to tell the truth. And when he started asking questions, I panicked. I thought he'd leave me if he knew. Hearing her lay it out like that, not in a fight, not in a defensive tone, but raw and trembling, hit me harder than I expected. Then it was my turn. I loved her because I thought she was honest with me. I said, I don't care about the job, modeling, accounting, dog walking, it doesn't matter. What matters is that she lied to my face for 2 years. Every time she said she was somewhere else, every time she gave me a half story, every time she looked me in the eye and told me something I now know wasn't true, it broke me. How can I trust anything she says now? The words hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. Nathan, it sounds like honesty is one of your core needs in a relationship. I nodded. It is. Without it, what's the point? And Emily, she continued, it sounds like fear drove your decisions, fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of losing love. Emily wiped her eyes. Yes, always fear. I didn't want to be my parents' disappointment and my boyfriend's shame. Dr. Patel paused, letting the silence settle. So we have honesty and fear colliding. Nathan, when you discovered the truth, what did you feel first? Anger, I admitted, and humiliation, like the whole world was in on a joke I didn't get. Emily flinched. And underneath that anger, Dr. Patel pressed gently, I swallowed hard. Fear, too, that I'd wasted years of my life loving someone who didn't exist, that I'd been played. Emily reached for my hand instinctively, but pulled away, not out of cruelty, but because the wound was still raw. Over the next few sessions, we dug deeper. Emily shared stories I had never heard before. How, at 16, she landed a small photo shoot gig and came home excited to tell her parents only for her father to sneer, so you want to sell yourself now? How her mother told her, no man will ever take you seriously if you do this. She cried as she admitted how much those words scarred her. When you and I started dating, Nate, I thought you were different, but the voice of my parents never left me. I kept thinking, if he finds out, he'll leave, and I couldn't bear that. Listening to her, I saw the girl behind the walls, the one who had spent years building armor around her dream, terrified that anyone she loved would shatter it. But then it was my turn to open up. I admitted my own insecurities, how being cheated on in college left me hypersensitive to lies, how my ex had hidden messages from me, and when I found out, I promised myself I'd never ignore red flags again. So, when Emily lied, I said, all those old wounds ripped open. It wasn't just about modeling, it was about betrayal all over again. Emily's face softened with understanding. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know you carried that. That's the thing, I said bitterly. You never gave me the chance to know you either. Dr. Patel nodded. What I'm hearing is that both of you brought past wounds into this relationship. Emily, your fear of rejection led you to hide the truth. Nathan, your fear of betrayal made the discovery unbearable. You've both been reacting to each other's fears, not each other's reality. Her words hit me like a punch. She was right. We weren't fighting about modeling or Marcus or photos. We were fighting about fear. But even with that clarity, the question remained, could we move forward? One session stands out in my memory. Dr. Patel asked us to look at each other, really look, and answer one question. Do you still love this person? Emily's answer came instantly. Yes. With everything in me, yes. Mine wasn't so simple. I don't know, I said honestly. I love who I thought she was. I love parts of her now, but I don't know if I can ever feel the same way again. Emily's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Then what are we doing here? And I had no answer, but therapy wasn't about answers, not yet. It was about stripping us raw, forcing us to confront truths we had avoided. I saw Emily in ways I never had before, the little girl, desperate for approval, the woman fighting to own her identity, the partner terrified of losing love. And she saw me too, the man scarred by betrayal, clinging to honesty like a lifeline, drowning whenever it slipped from his grasp. There were moments when I felt hope, like when Emily looked me in the eye and said, I'll never lie to you again, even if it cost me everything. Or when I admitted, I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I want to try. But there were also moments when I felt despair. When silence stretched too long, when my chest ached with doubt, when I wondered if some wounds just never heal. Dr. Patel never told us what to do. She never said, stay together or break up. Instead, she asked the hardest question of all. Is love enough? Was it? I thought love was the foundation of everything, but sitting in that office, holding Emily's trembling hand, I realized love wasn't always the problem or the solution. Trust was. And without it, we were just two broken people clinging to memories of something that once felt perfect. You know that moment when you're staring at two doors and no matter which one you pick, a part of you dies? That's where I found myself with Emily. After weeks of therapy, late night arguments, awkward silences, and painful honesty, it all came down to one truth. I had to decide whether to stay or walk away. And let me tell you, both options felt like loss. It wasn't one dramatic event that made me realize this. It wasn't a fight or a revelation or even Dr. Patel telling me something profound. It was a Tuesday morning. Emily was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, sipping coffee. She looked tired, but softer somehow. The constant tension that had knotted her shoulders was gone. She looked at me and said quietly, "Whatever you choose, Nate, thank you for giving me the chance to be honest, even if I was too late." And that's when it hit me. This wasn't about punishing her anymore. It wasn't about clinging to what we used to be. It was about who I was becoming and whether that version of me could live in peace with her. Over the next week, I replayed everything in my head. The first time we met, when she laughed too hard at my lame joke, the way she used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the countless nights we stayed up talking about everything and nothing. But then also the lies, the way she'd look me in the eye and tell me she was working late when she was actually doing shoots, the pit in my stomach when I found out the truth, the constant doubt that followed every text, every absence, every story I had to analyze twice. It was love and pain, side by side. Dr. Patel once asked me, "Nathan, do you want Emily or do you want the version of Emily you thought existed?" That question haunted me, because the truth was, the version I thought existed, the girl who was simple, transparent, and unshakably honest, had never been real. The real Emily was complex, scarred, ambitious, afraid, and sometimes dishonest. Could I accept her for who she actually was? Not the fantasy, not the projection, but her? I didn't know the answer until one night, when I found myself sitting in my car outside her apartment, staring at the building. I hadn't told her I was coming. I just drove there, parked, and sat in the dark, gripping the wheel until my knuckles turned white. And then it hit me. If I had to fight this hard to want to be here, maybe I didn't belong here anymore. When I finally went upstairs, she opened the door with a small smile, like she wasn't sure if I'd show up. "Hey," she whispered. "Hey," I said back. My voice felt heavy. We sat on the couch. No wine, no background music, no distractions, just us. I took a deep breath. "Emily, I've thought about this a lot and I need to be honest with you, the way I wish you'd been honest with me." Her hands trembled in her lap. "I love you," I said. "God, I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. But I don't trust you, and I don't know if I ever fully will again. And if I stay, knowing that, I'll resent you. I'll resent myself, and that'll kill us both." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "So, you're leaving?" I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think I have to." She broke down then, sobbing into her hands, and all I wanted to do was pull her into me, hold her, tell her we can make it work. But I knew that wasn't love anymore. That was fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of letting go of something beautiful, even if it was broken. So instead, I just sat there, my chest aching, letting her cry. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes swollen, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Nate. I thought hiding would protect us, but it destroyed us. I'll never make that mistake again." And I believed her, but that didn't mean we could go back. The breakup wasn't explosive. There was no screaming, no dramatic storming out. It was quiet, almost gentle. I left her apartment that night, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in forever. Peace. It wasn't happiness, it wasn't relief, it was just stillness. The noise in my head finally quieted. In the weeks that followed, I went through the motions of grief. Some mornings, I woke up reaching for her, only to find an empty bed. Some nights, I scrolled through old photos until my chest hurt too much to keep looking. I bumped into her sister, Chloe, once at a coffee shop, and the sadness in her eyes nearly broke me. But I also started rediscovering myself. I went on long runs without checking my phone every 5 minutes. I reconnected with friends I drifted from. I sat with Sarah and Ryan and told them everything. The therapy, the decision, the pain. Sarah said she was proud of me for walking away. Ryan just patted my shoulder and said, "Sometimes letting go is the bravest thing you can do." And maybe he was right. As for Emily, she reached out a few times, not to beg, not to fight, just simple messages. "Hope you're doing okay. Thinking of you. I'm working on being better." I never ignored her, but I never engaged deeply either. I cared for her, but we both knew it was over. One night, months later, I found myself writing down everything I'd been through, the lies, the therapy, the decision. Not to publish, not to send to her, just to process. And that's how I realized something important. This wasn't just a story about betrayal, it was a story about fear and honesty. About how love isn't enough if it doesn't come with transparency. About how secrecy, no matter the reason, poisons even the strongest bond. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship, here's what I want you to take away. Tell the truth, always. Even when it's messy, even when it's scary, even when you're sure it'll push them away. Because the truth might hurt, but lies will kill you slowly. And if you've ever been on my side of it, if you've ever loved someone who betrayed your trust, I want you to know it's okay to walk away. Love doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. Love doesn't mean tolerating lies. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. So, did I stay with Emily? No. Do I regret it? Also no. Because even though it broke me, it also built me. It taught me what I need, what I value, what I refuse to compromise on again. And Emily, she grew too. I think she'll go into her next relationship stronger, more open, less afraid of being who she really is. That's the bittersweet part. Sometimes you have to lose each other to find yourselves. And maybe that's what love really is. Not always forever, not always easy, but always a teacher. So, as someone reading your story, Nathan, I have to say it's raw, honest, and really hits on something a lot of people struggle with but rarely talk about: how secrecy can quietly destroy a relationship, even when love is still there. You did a great job of showing both sides. Emily wasn't just the liar. She was a scared human being who thought hiding her career would protect what you two had, and you weren't just the victim. You were someone torn between love and broken trust. That balance makes the story feel real instead of one-sided. My suggestion for you is this: don't let this experience turn you cold or make you distrust every future partner. You learned a tough lesson about honesty, but it doesn't mean everyone you meet will repeat the same mistakes. Use what happened as filter, value transparency from the start. Communicate your needs early and trust your gut if something feels off. At the same time, try not to carry Emily's shadow into your next relationship, because that'll only punish someone who doesn't deserve it. Alright, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the story. We have so many more amazing stories coming your way, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to reach 100K subscribers by the end of this year, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in